Hi everyone, this is Matthew's Movie Mentions. We're up to week 12 now. Through a really random, crazy happenstance, I watched a number of films from a few of my favourite directors this week, which was absolutely not planned. These were mostly films that I picked in the moment, but it was a very, very pleasant way to spend a week. So we are going to be talking about The Town, Barry Lyndon, Magnolia, Indie Game the Movie, A Beautiful Mind, The Prestige, R.I.P.D., and The Crow. The Town was one that was recommended by my dad. He loved it. It's a Ben Affleck-directed movie. I enjoyed it a lot, not quite as much as he did. I thought the story was very interesting. It was a bit different than the normal kind of story that's told about heists or clever police criminal type things going on. Rebecca Hall was superb as the romantic love interest, second character, or I don't even know how to describe her. I really enjoyed her performance in Christine that I saw a few weeks back, so I feel like she's someone I might actually seek out her other films over the year. There's probably a moral or a message in this film that was lost a bit on me because I've never been to Boston. I'm not aware of the city's personality as such, so it was a really good drama. I just perhaps was for someone who's not me. Barry Lyndon is one. I've got it in the Stanley Kubrick box set on DVD, but I'd never actually seen it. And one of the things I want to try to do this year is watch films that I own that I've never seen, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it happens, particularly when you have a box set of a dozen films. It's not one of the flashier movies he made, but I absolutely loved this. It was beautiful. It was the production, you could see the high quality of it. And the film was very quiet as it progressed. It just sort of grew on itself really well. During the first half, I didn't think it was going to be particularly deep, but then the second half really took it in an interesting direction. Did a lot of very, very gripping things. I was reminded a bit of the story of Candide, but this was a much more grown-up take on some of the same thing, dealing with a class system and someone trying to get ahead in the world. Magnolia was on my list as a classic film that I should watch at some point, but watching it through, I feel like I'd seen it before, that I always knew what was coming. The big twist in it, the moment that's so surprising is the Rain of Frogs, and I had definitely seen that. I'd seen all the game show stuff, I'd seen Tom Cruise's emotion during the interview and with his father, I'd seen William H. Macy in the bar and Julianne Moore doing stuff, so maybe I'd seen it and forgotten. Maybe I've seen it in pieces referenced elsewhere. Either way, it's a very good film. It's an interesting, almost anthology of a number of different stories. And for me, the thing that just lets it down a little is I expected those stories to come together at the end and weave together somehow as, oh, okay, I can see how they're all connected. I can see what these characters mean to each other in a different way. And that never quite came across. I think there were connections, but they didn't really mean anything. So it didn't spoil the film, but I was expecting another moment at the end that didn't come. Indie Game the Movie, we are covering in a couple of weeks on Pop Culturally Deprived. We're going to be doing a couple of documentaries. This was my choice. It's one of, if not my favourite documentary. It's a terrific insight into the creative process and the passion of people creating something. Whether you care about video games or not, it's a terrific watch. It's just so... it's heartwarming in places, it's heartbreaking in others. It's, like I say, it's a great insight. The personalities help the narrative of the film flow really well as they go through their own process of developing and releasing games. And it does end up as being a very rewarding watch, so that's always one to recommend. A Beautiful Mind was another film that I felt I should watch. I didn't actually know the story beforehand, and that definitely helped. When we got into him decoding Russian messages and helping the government, it was a different film than I expected. And then when you suddenly get the revelation about it all, I was pretty floored. It then became the film I expected, but was better because it did weave some of this fantasy, not fantasy in the classic sense, but fantastical elements in with the verisimilitude of his situation. So, yeah, really loved this film. It was heartbreaking, but ended up being very affirming for all that. So, good. The Prestige is one that started one evening when we turned off, I think, one of the Arrowverse shows, and this had literally just started on, so I left it on, because it's one of my favourite films of all time. I love the narrative techniques that it uses. I love the reveals that you get towards the end, but the hints you get towards them as you go through that absolutely mean nothing and are so subtle. The visual elements of it, the performances, they're all amazing. The movie does so much that appeals to me and to what I love about cinema. Even watching it this time, I was picking up on a few things and going, oh, I really like the way they do this, and I like the way they do this, and it's so clever. Sometimes you do want a different experience than something that clever, and on Saturday morning I was very tired after a very long week, so I wanted something a bit mindless to watch, and Netflix had just recommended R.I.P.D., and this fantasy action film was exactly what I wanted. It pairs Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges together, but the roles they play are the roles that the other would normally get. So Reynolds in this is the more considered, slightly quieter character, and Jeff Bridges is the one who's energetic and talking all the time, which is the opposite of what I would expect these two actors to play. The film, other than that, was entirely by the numbers. It would have been really interesting had they flipped the roles entirely, so made the younger person the not aged obviously, but the curmudgeonly mentor type. But no, it was everything you would expect from a buddy comedy about an older gruff police person and a younger less gruff police person, and then it ripped off the plot, the effects, the style, pretty much everything from Men in Black. But like I say, sometimes you need something like that. And then we watched The Crow, so at the end of a long weekend where we had lots on, we just wanted something familiar, so we put on what is a classic that we'd not seen in years. It not held up quite as well as I had hoped it might have done, but it was quite nice that the film doesn't put everything in danger. There's this sort of thing these days with action films that it has to be the world is about to be destroyed, or this person's about to take power over the whole country, or huge peril. This is just, he's going after a gang of a few dudes, and it's not huge peril. It ends up a little bit escalated at the end, but it's still much smaller, so that's good. Brandon Lee is terrific. He is funny at times, he's chilling at others, he's really good. So that's a loss you definitely do feel. I think my recommendation this week, although we've got some of my favourite films in here, some of my favourite directors, we've got a Kubrick film in here, so that should probably be the recommendation, but I think Indie Game the movie is probably the one I'd rate the highest out of all of them, and it's probably the one that fewest people have seen. It's a wonderful film. It's got a perfect trio of stories that help you understand the passion of people who are producing art that they want other people to enjoy, so that's one I think everyone should seek out. Over the next week, hopefully a cinema trip or two. Again, there's a number of things out that we want to see, and I have to watch For the Love of Spock for the podcast, so that will be quite fun. So I'll see everyone next week on week 13.